Have you ever felt like life is supposed to slow down after 40? Like your best years are behind you? What if I told you that's a lie? Especially if you're a Sagittarius. Because for this bold and adventurous sign, life doesn't truly begin until 40. Sounds strange? Think about it. In your 20s, you're busy chasing dreams that aren't really yours. In your 30s, you're trying to meet everyone else's expectations. But when 40 arrives, something shifts. For Sagittarius, it's not the end of freedom. It's the start of real freedom. Not freedom to run, but freedom to finally come home to yourself. Today, I'll share with you 18 deep reasons why Sagittarius transforms at 40. Not just on the outside, but in their mind, their heart, their soul. And trust me, some of these will surprise you. This isn't about zodiac cliches. This is about understanding who you really are, or the Sagittarius you love. So if you're ready for something deeper, something more personal, stay with me. And hey, if you enjoy videos that help you grow, understand yourself, and see life from a new angle, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and hit subscribe. Because this might just change the way you see yourself. Let's begin. There's a moment, somewhere around 40, when Sagittarius wakes up and realizes freedom isn't about how far they can run. It's about how deeply they can feel. In their younger years, freedom meant movement. A new city. A different job. Spontaneous road trips just to feel alive. But over time, those escapes start to feel empty. And that's when something profound happens. Sagittarius discovers that true freedom has nothing to do with where they are. It's about what they carry inside. They stop running from the discomfort they used to avoid. Fear, loneliness, uncertainty, these feelings used to push them out the door. But now, they lean in. They sit with the fear instead of fleeing from it. And slowly, the fear loses its power. It doesn't vanish overnight. It lingers. But Sagittarius understands, avoiding fear only feeds it. Facing it transforms it. And this inner shift is liberating. Suddenly, they don't need to prove anything. Not to friends. Not to family. Not even to themselves. Freedom becomes a quiet presence inside them. Not a loud adventure outside. Have you ever met someone who doesn't need to explain their choices anymore? Who simply knows what feels right? That's Sagittarius after 40. They no longer ask for permission to live their truth. And that's powerful. Imagine this, you've spent years chasing dreams that don't belong to you. Jobs that looked good on paper. Relationships that looked perfect on Instagram. Adventures that gave you the illusion of control. But one morning, you wake up and realize none of it fills the emptiness inside. That's the moment Sagittarius stops and asks, what am I really searching for? And here's where the transformation begins. The restless search, the constant need for answers, quiets down. Because now, Sagittarius learns to trust the unknown. They realize that life's greatest wisdom doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from accepting that some things will always be uncertain. In their 30s, not knowing felt terrifying. Every unanswered question was a problem to solve. Every doubt felt like failure. But at 40, Sagittarius lets go of the need to solve everything. They embrace the mystery. They learn to sit with unanswered questions, trusting that clarity will come when it's meant to. Not when they force it. This shift is subtle but life-changing. Suddenly, life isn't a puzzle. It's a story. And Sagittarius is ready to live it, not analyze it. Maybe you've felt this too. That moment when you realize clarity isn't something you chase. It's something you create by listening to your own inner voice. And that voice? Sagittarius stops ignoring it. They stop dismissing their gut feelings in favor of logic or other people's opinions. Because they finally understand, no one knows their soul's path better than they do. But trusting yourself, that's not easy. Especially after years of people telling you who you should be. Sagittarius knows this pain. They've tried to fit into boxes that felt too small. Followed rules that silenced their fire. They've heard it all: be more realistic. Stop changing your mind. Pick one path and stick with it. At 40, Sagittarius stops listening. And they stop seeking approval too. Because something powerful clicks inside them: their worth isn't defined by applause. Not from their boss. Not from their parents. Not from society. They start to source their self-worth from within. Think about that. What if you stopped needing anyone to tell you you're enough? How would your life change? For Sagittarius, it means freedom like they've never known. They stop asking, "Am I good enough?" and start asking, "Does this feel right for me?" This internal compass becomes their guide. It's not perfect. They still doubt themselves sometimes. But the difference is, they no longer abandon themselves. And here's where forgiveness enters the story. Not forgiveness for others. Forgiveness for themselves. Sagittarius carries invisible guilt. The guilt of failed relationships. Abandoned projects. Words left unsaid. Places they ran from without explanation. For years, they've carried that weight. But at 40, they begin to let it go. Because they realize, those so-called failures? They were necessary steps. Not mistakes. Not weaknesses. Just lessons that shaped who they are. They forgive their younger self. The impulsive choices. The wrong turns. The restless heart. They stop judging the version of themselves who was simply trying to survive. And they offer that younger version something they've never offered before: compassion. Imagine looking in the mirror and saying, "You did your best. And that's enough." That's what Sagittarius learns. And it's liberating. Because once they forgive themselves, something incredible happens. They begin to heal. And healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means accepting. Integrating. Allowing every part of their story to exist, without shame. And through this healing, Sagittarius discovers vulnerability. Not as a weakness, but as a superpower. In their youth, vulnerability felt dangerous. Letting people see the cracks meant risking rejection. So they hid behind humor. Behind adventure. Behind constant motion. But all that movement was just armor. At 40, they lay the armor down. They learn to say, "I'm scared. I'm hurt. I don't know." And they realize something miraculous: people don't pull away when you're vulnerable. They come closer. Sagittarius discovers that true strength isn't about pretending to be unbreakable. It's about having the courage to let others see you when you are. This shift changes their relationships. Their conversations. Their entire life. Because now, connection is built on truth, not performance. And maybe that's the greatest adventure of all. So, if you're listening to this and you're a Sagittarius, or you love one, know this: at 40, the real journey begins. Not the one that takes you around the world. The one that takes you deep inside your own soul. And once you start that journey, you'll never want to run from yourself again. Something changes when Sagittarius turns 40. Passion, which once felt like wild energy scattered in every direction, begins to find focus. In their 20s and 30s, every spark felt like a fire to chase. Every idea felt urgent. Every new path seemed like the right one. But after years of running towards everything, they realize, not every spark deserves their flame. Their passion doesn't fade. It sharpens. They no longer act on impulse. They act with intention. The things they choose to pursue now aren't chosen because they're exciting. They're chosen because they're meaningful. And that's a huge difference. Their energy stops burning them out. It starts fueling them. Think of someone building a fire in the woods. At 20, Sagittarius throws every branch, every leaf, into the flames. It burns bright but disappears fast. At 40, they've learned. They choose solid logs. They arrange them carefully. The fire burns slower, but stronger. That's how their passion evolves. And this change isn't just professional. It affects how they love, how they create, how they wake up in the morning. They realize their energy is sacred. And they protect it by giving it only to what truly matters. Sometimes, people around them don't understand. They say, "You've changed." And they have. They're no longer chasing life. They're building it. This shift brings them to a deeper understanding of success. In youth, success meant achievements. The job title. The house. The relationship that looked good on the outside. But by 40, Sagittarius no longer wants to look successful. They want to feel fulfilled. They stop asking, "Does this impress others?" and start asking, "Does this nourish my soul?" Because external rewards never truly satisfied them. Not for long. Now, success is redefined as impact, as alignment, as doing work that feels honest, loving people who feel real, living in ways that bring peace, not stress. Have you ever chased something, then felt empty when you got it? Sagittarius knows that feeling too well. That's why at 40, they shift. They choose depth over appearances. They care less about how things look, and more about how things feel. This new definition of success gives them freedom. They're no longer tied to paths that don't fit. They're no longer stuck chasing approval. They can walk away from anything that drains them, and walk towards what inspires them. It's not easy, but it's necessary. And with every decision made from alignment, not fear, Sagittarius feels lighter, more authentic, more alive. And here's something unexpected. With this newfound focus, Sagittarius also redefines their relationships. Specifically, how they love. In their younger years, love felt like chaos. The adrenaline of unpredictability. The passion that burned fast and left ashes. For a long time, they confused excitement with connection. Drama with depth. Uncertainty with desire. But after years of emotional roller coasters, something shifts. Sagittarius no longer wants love that leaves them exhausted. They crave love that grounds them, holds them, grows with them. They realize love isn't supposed to feel like a battlefield. It's supposed to feel like coming home. And with this understanding, they change how they love. They stop choosing partners who try to tame their fire. And they stop trying to shrink themselves to fit someone else's story. Instead, they seek someone who respects their freedom, but stands with them, not in front of them. They learn that true connection isn't about possession. It's about partnership. It's about choosing each other, again and again, without needing to control or fix the other person. Maybe you've seen this in your own life. That moment when you realize love isn't about losing yourself. It's about finding someone who celebrates who you've always been. For Sagittarius at 40, love becomes peaceful, not boring. Honest, not complicated. They love more fully because they love themselves more deeply. And in that space of self-acceptance, real intimacy finally blooms. This new way of loving doesn't come from fairy tales. It comes from lived experience. From heartbreaks survived. From lessons learned. From years spent running, only to realize what they were searching for wasn't out there. It was inside. And that brings us to something beautiful. Something Sagittarius never expected. The power of their own voice. At 40, Sagittarius realizes they have stories to tell. Not just experiences to share, but truths that carry wisdom. Lessons shaped by joy, by pain, by wonder, by loss. They've lived. And they've learned. But now, they know how to express it. Their stories aren't performances anymore. They're bridges. When they speak, it's not to impress. It's to connect. Whether it's over coffee with a close friend or standing in front of a room full of strangers. Their voice carries something different now. People listen. Not because Sagittarius is trying to be heard, but because they're speaking from a place of raw honesty. Their laughter holds depth. Their advice carries warmth. Their silences feel safe. Sagittarius at 40 knows the power of reflection. They turn their past into stories not for attention, but for healing. For themselves. And for others. It's no longer about saying, "Look what I've done." It's about saying, "You're not alone." Storytelling becomes their way of building connections that matter. And in every word, they share a piece of themselves. The real self. The one they spent years running from, and finally learned to embrace. Their voice becomes their gift. And that's where we'll pause, for now. Because what comes next will reveal the most unexpected, and perhaps the most controversial truths, about why Sagittarius doesn't just live life, they redefine it after 40. At 40, something unexpected happens to Sagittarius. They stop needing noise. Silence, which once felt uncomfortable, now feels like peace. For years, they filled every quiet moment with distractions. Plans. Conversations. Constant movement. Not because they loved chaos, but because they feared stillness. Stillness forced them to face their thoughts. Their doubts. Their loneliness. But now, solitude becomes their sanctuary. They start enjoying quiet mornings without needing to check their phone. They find calm in walking alone, with no destination in mind. They begin to cherish evenings spent with just themselves, not because they've given up on people, but because they've finally built a home inside their own heart. Alone doesn't mean empty anymore. It means whole. They stop waiting for someone to fill their life. They start filling it themselves. Books. Nature. Creativity. Rest. Whatever nourishes their spirit. That shift is powerful. Because once you become your own safe space, you stop depending on others to complete you. Sagittarius realizes solitude isn't loneliness. It's clarity. And through that clarity, they discover forgiveness. But not forgiveness for someone else. Forgiveness for themselves. They forgive the younger version of who they were. The version that ran from discomfort. That chose the wrong people. That made impulsive decisions. Not out of weakness, but out of survival. Sagittarius understands now, their younger self wasn't broken. Just unhealed. They stop criticizing the person they used to be. They start holding space for them. They look back at past mistakes and say, softly, "You didn't know better." And that's okay. This self-forgiveness isn't dramatic. It's quiet. Gentle. But it changes everything. Because as they release guilt and regret, something shifts. They feel lighter. Freer. They stop punishing themselves for the past. They start choosing peace in the present. And that peace brings them to a realization. Not every battle needs to be fought. Not every question needs an answer. Sometimes, acceptance is the answer. At 40, Sagittarius lets go of the constant need to fix. The pressure to prove. They realize life is not a problem to solve. It's an experience to feel. Their inner critic, once so loud, starts to fade. And their inner healer finally has space to speak. This healing transforms how they approach the future. Sagittarius has always been driven by desire. Goals. Adventures. dreams. But now, desire changes shape. It's no longer about chasing something new. It's about deepening what already exists. In their career, they stop pursuing endless promotions or projects that don't align with their soul. They choose work that feels authentic. Work that lets them create, contribute, and grow without losing themselves. Success is no longer a race. It's a rhythm. In their relationships, they stop chasing intensity. They choose stability. Without sacrificing passion. Love becomes simpler, not because it's boring, but because it's honest. They don't need drama to feel alive anymore. They need connection. Real connection. The kind that feels like breathing. Natural. Easy. Safe. And in their daily life, they shift too. They stop saying yes out of guilt. Stop attending events that drain them. Stop explaining their boundaries. A simple no becomes enough. Not out of rebellion, but out of self-respect. They understand now, every yes is a choice. Every no protects their energy. They no longer apologize for choosing themselves. This clarity seeps into every part of life. Decisions become lighter. The noise of the world softens. The opinions of others lose their grip. Sagittarius listens to one voice now. Their own. And when they follow that voice, something magical happens. Life slows down. Not because they're tired, but because they're finally present. They stop rushing. Stop forcing. They begin to savor. Morning coffee isn't just a caffeine hit. It's a moment of gratitude. A walk in the park isn't just exercise. It's a quiet adventure. A conversation isn't a distraction. It's a connection. They discover joy hidden in ordinary moments. And this discovery changes their relationship with life itself. Because now, life is no longer a checklist. It's a meditation. They understand success isn't about the next milestone. It's about how deeply they're living each day. And this depth doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of years spent searching outward and finally turning inward. At 40, Sagittarius realizes they don't need to chase life anymore. They're already in it. And yet, what comes next will surprise them even more. Because the final three truths we're about to explore hold the deepest and perhaps the most controversial lessons of their entire journey. There's something deeply healing that happens when Sagittarius finally understands the real meaning of connection. In their younger years, relationships felt like a rush. Meeting new people. Sharing stories. Jumping from one connection to another, always searching for the next exciting conversation. But after 40, that need for constant interaction fades. They no longer want many people around them. They want the right ones. People who don't just understand their words, but feel their silence. People who respect their freedom, but also hold space when they choose to stay. The friendships that remain become fewer, but deeper. They no longer need to explain themselves. They no longer seek to be understood by everyone. They only want to be understood by those who matter. And when they find those few souls who see them, who hear them without judgment, they protect those bonds like treasure. These are the people who can sit with them in silence and still feel connected. These are the people who don't demand explanations, but offer presence. Sagittarius learns that connection isn't about numbers. It's about depth. And that's not the only relationship that changes. Their relationship with their body shifts too. For years, Sagittarius treated their body like a machine. Something that carried them from one adventure to the next. They pushed it. Ignored its limits. Slept less. Ate fast. Moved constantly. Because slowing down felt like weakness. But at 40, their body starts speaking more loudly. Not with pain, but with quiet signals. A need for rest. a craving for nourishment, a desire for care. And for the first time, Sagittarius listens. They realize their body isn't an obstacle to freedom. It's the foundation of it. They start treating themselves with respect. Not out of fear, but out of love. Food becomes fuel, not punishment. Movement becomes joy, not obligation. Rest becomes sacred, not guilt. They stop comparing their body to others. They stop chasing unrealistic goals. They start asking one simple question: does this make me feel alive? Their body becomes a trusted partner, not something to conquer. They learn that honoring their body honors their spirit. And this changes everything. This shift in physical awareness leads them to something deeper. Purpose. In their 20s, purpose meant achievements. Something to prove. A title to earn. A dream to chase. But at 40, Sagittarius wakes up and realizes purpose isn't something outside of them. It's not about the job, the house, the applause. Purpose is how they choose to show up each day. It's the small actions, the quiet choices. It's saying yes when their soul says yes. Saying no without guilt. It's doing work that matters, not because it's big, but because it's true. Sagittarius stops trying to create a life that looks meaningful. They create a life that feels meaningful. They stop performing. They start living. And people notice. Because authenticity has a glow you can't fake. Suddenly, they don't need to convince anyone of their worth. They live it. They breathe it. Their life becomes aligned from the inside out. They care less about what the world thinks, and more about what their heart feels. And that simple shift unlocks a peace they've never known. But perhaps one of the quietest, yet most powerful lessons at 40, is learning to say no. For years, Sagittarius said yes to avoid conflict. Yes to avoid disappointing others. Yes because no felt selfish. But every yes that wasn't real drained their spirit. And one day, they realize saying no is not rejection. It's honesty. They start saying no to plans that don't excite them. No to work that drains them. No to people who take without giving. No to anything that steals their peace. And they say it without explanation. Without apology. Not from anger, but from clarity. Because now they understand, boundaries aren't walls. They're self-respect. Every no becomes a way to say yes to themselves. And that's not selfish. That's necessary. This quiet power of choosing themselves, of honoring their energy, transforms how they move through life. Decisions feel lighter. Relationships feel clearer. Life feels simpler. Not because life gets easier, but because Sagittarius finally stops complicating it. They trust themselves. They trust their choices. And that trust is freedom. But what comes next is something Sagittarius never expected. The final 3 truths we're about to uncover are not just the deepest, they're the ones that might challenge everything you thought you knew about this sign. Stay with me. Because what's waiting could change everything. At 40, Sagittarius uncovers a truth they never expected. They no longer need to outrun fear. For most of their life, fear was the silent force behind their constant movement. Fear of being trapped. Fear of being hurt. Fear of choosing wrong. So they ran. They changed cities, jobs, relationships. Not because they were careless, but because staying felt like losing themselves. But now, they pause. They face what they once fled from. And they learn something that surprises them. Fear doesn't disappear when you run. It grows. It chases you. It follows you into every new place, every new face, every new adventure. But when you stop, when you stand still, when you turn toward it, fear softens. It shrinks. it loses power. Sagittarius realizes bravery isn't in running fast. It's in standing still when everything inside screams to move. It's in staying present in difficult conversations. It's in expressing their truth, even when their voice shakes. It's in choosing to trust someone, even after being hurt. And this, for Sagittarius, is real freedom. The freedom to stop running. They learn that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's strength. That connection isn't found by escaping discomfort, but by walking through it. And in that space, they grow in ways their younger self never imagined. They become grounded, calm, present. They no longer fear commitment. They no longer fear stillness. Because they've discovered the truth, peace isn't found somewhere out there. It's created within. And then comes perhaps the most beautiful revelation of all. At 40, Sagittarius reconnects with someone they almost forgot. Their inner child. In youth, their playful self was alive and loud. They dreamed without limits, loved without hesitation, laughed without fear. But life dimmed that light. Responsibilities, expectations, pain, failure. Somewhere along the way, they told themselves it was time to grow up, to get serious, to protect their heart. But now, they understand, growing up doesn't mean shutting down. It doesn't mean silencing joy. It means learning to protect that joy, to nurture it, to make space for it again. Sagittarius begins to listen to the child within. They remember what made them happy before the world told them what they should want. They forgive themselves for the moments they abandoned that innocence. They stop being embarrassed about the dreams they once held. They embrace them. And in doing so, they find a new kind of wisdom. They realize that their inner child isn't holding them back. It's guiding them forward, reminding them to play, to laugh, to create, to wonder. But now, with love, not recklessness. With wisdom, not fear. This reunion is healing. It softens the hard edges adulthood built. It brings back a spark, not of chaos, but of pure, authentic joy. Sagittarius no longer sees life as something to survive. They see it as something to savor. And maybe, that's the real adventure they've been searching for all along. So, what does all of this mean? What's the deeper message here? If you've watched this far, perhaps you're starting to see it. Life doesn't slow down after 40. Not for Sagittarius. Life begins. Not because they discover new places, but because they finally discover themselves. They stop running from who they are. They stop chasing what doesn't fit. They stop apologizing for the fire inside them. And they begin living. Not perfectly. Not without fear. But honestly. Deeply. Authentically. Every choice made from alignment. Every relationship chosen for love, not loneliness. Every moment lived not to impress, but to express. Sagittarius at 40 is no longer searching for freedom. They are freedom. And maybe you felt a part of yourself in this story. Maybe you saw someone you love. Maybe you realized you've been running too. If you did, let this be your reminder. You are not late. You are not broken. You are simply becoming. And that journey is worth every step. If this video spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs to be reminded that their real life is just beginning. And if you saw yourself in these words, if you felt something awaken inside you, I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments. Tell me, what part of this journey feels most like yours? And of course, if you want more videos like this, about astrology, about psychology, about life itself, subscribe to the channel. Like this video. Stay with us. Because this is just one chapter. There's so much more waiting. And next time, we'll explore it together.